Hey, good morning, everybody.
Morning. Morning.
Morning. So this talk is about a really amazing, in my mind, fascicle called Bendoho. And probably many of you have not heard of this fascicle of Dogen, but before we dive into it, just kind of scratching the surface on it, what I want to underscore is the importance in our practice of connecting with this sense of passion, because I think so many of us feel like we're not worthy of love, we're not worthy of compassion. Um, and compassion comes in many forms in Zen Buddhism that might not be obvious. Last week I talked about, actually 2 weeks ago, I talked about grandmotherly mind as a form of
You're
unconditional
gonna have
love.
the last line reran, so you just have to retype it.
And then last week I mentioned big mind or big heart. I think that's another way of talking about this kind of
No,
unconditional,
Tom doesn't want to walk with them kidney stones.
getting some
Yeah, you got
feedback.
kidney stones right now. I, I guess.
Okay, there we go. Uh, anyways, there's a lot of ways to imagine or conceive of this sense of compassion that I think we're all, again, we sometimes have a problem with feeling that we are worthy of love, feeling that we're worthy of compassion. And it's the kind of love I'm talking about is not based on believing in something. It's not based on being a Buddhist. It's not based on becoming something. It's not based on whether you've received the precepts or not received the precepts, whether you're a member or whether you're not a member. It's not based on your past actions, whether you've done something really good or you've done something that you regret. This kind of compassion, this kind of unconditional love is something that we can access in any moment. And for me, and I think for many of you, Zazen is a wonderful way in which to access that unconditional love, where it's not based on something that we do, but it's based on our very existence. And that's the foundation of Zen practice. It's this love is
I was
based
reading
on
it's from being
our
hydrated.
existence, not on something that we've done. So if we approach Bendoho from that angle, I think we will maybe understand it a little bit better. So I want to talk about this fascicle. Bendoho means engaging the way. It's been translated as engaging the way. And the first part of it really talks about being able to harmonize with the whole community. It's written especially for monks living in a monastery. And if you, at a first reading, you might think, what relevance does this have for my life? I'm not a monk. I don't live in a monastery. So having had the opportunity to train in monasteries, particularly in Japan, also in other places like Tassajara, and studying this Bendoho, which I think maybe another way of thinking about it is it's a roadmap for enlightenment. It's a roadmap that helps us to actualize enlightenment as opposed to think about it. But how do we go from a monastic setting to a lay life setting? How do we bring this teaching of oneness with all of life to our particular lives as they are, practicing not just with Buddhists, but with a predominantly non-Buddhist society, with a predominantly secularly based society, right? with the various diversities and differences that there are in our lives. And I think, because I had the opportunity to practice in a Japanese temple and to actually experience what it's like to be
46
one
inches.
with the community and
I
to
hope I didn't make it
practice
home.
in
That's all I
that
need to know.
way, because I had that experience, I feel like it's absolutely possible for anybody to begin to think and act as though they are one with everyone. The fascicle itself, Bendoho, begins with this idea of when the community goes to sleep, everybody goes to sleep. When the community wakes up, everybody wakes up together. That it's not our practice to stand out. And this is such a beautiful way of expressing, in my mind, a kind of democracy that lives in, or a democratic outlook within the Buddhist tradition. That it's not that one person is better than the other. And it's not just that like a teacher is somehow better than somebody who's been practicing less than they are, but that everybody is equal. Everybody's equal. So I think if we enter Bendoho from that particular mindset, we'll get more out of it. The danger of Bendoho, just to put it out front here, one of the dangers of Bendoho and with any teaching, we should always look at the positives of any spiritual teaching and the negative side of it, because every spiritual teaching has probably both sides, both angles. The negative side of this teaching on being one with the community is the real possibility for what's called groupthink, where people don't have their own individual identities. So we need to be careful about simply going with the flow of the majority because it's the majority. And use our discernment, use our discerning mind, our ability to discriminate right from wrong and apply it to our lives. Even if the majority is doing something wrong, doesn't mean we should go along with it because the majority is doing it. But we see that happening. We see that happening culturally. It's not just in Buddhist context that this is a problem, groupthink, but in other contexts as well. And so, while on the one hand there is this encouragement within this fascicle to join along with the community, to be at one with the community. On the other hand, there's also this admonition to be able to discern right from wrong. And that's where a study of the Bodhisattva precepts is also so important. And we have to take responsibility for our own actions within our life. Many of us have had the experience of oneness with reality, whether it's through a meditation practice where we come to this place in our mind and body where we think, oh, I'm absolutely at one with everything, right? Or maybe we've come to that realization through a prayer or through chanting. Maybe it's through a drug trip experience that we've come to that realization. The means through which we have that realization is many. Sometimes that realization happens spontaneously. But Zen practice, and it's really codified here in Bendoho, is not about the realization as much as it is actualizing it. So it's one thing to know, yes, I am one with all beings, right? It's one thing to know that, to believe in it even, to share that realization with others. It's another thing totally to actualize it, to live it out, to be as if that, to live as though that's actually the case. And that's where the rub with practice comes in. Practice. So the bottom line teaching in Bendoho is that practice and realization are one and the same. Right? So those two things, they go together. And another teaching, Daishu, the great community, Ichinyo, is one. So Daishu is referring to the Sangha. But Daishu could also be referring to, Dai means great, and Shu means the assembly. So we can think of the assembly as the people that are gathered together in our midst. And that's probably more natural to think of. But the Daishu, in a bigger sense, the Daishu is all reality, all beings. And that's why in the Buddhist teaching, there's many references to our interrelationship with all beings. We say in the 3 refuges, I take refuge in Buddha, may all beings embody the great way, resolving to awaken. So it's not just me, but that we're doing this together with all beings. I take refuge in Dharma. May all beings deeply enter the sutras, wisdom like an ocean. So it's not just me entering the sutras, it's all beings together. I take refuge in Sangha. May all beings support harmony in the community, free from all hindrance. That's what this fascicle, Bendoho, is really about, supporting harmony in the community. I want to share a verse from the Avatamsaka Sutra. Beings' bodies, differences arise from the mind discriminating. Thus are the lands varied, all depending on acts. Right? So beings' bodies, all beings, not just people. And arise from the mind's discrimination. So discrimination here is not necessarily a negative thing. That's what the mind does. And so we naturally discriminate. We notice differences. The problem is it's that noticing of differences that we think that we're separate. We associate the differences with being separate from each other. And the sutra is saying that those differences arise, the fact that we have differences arise from this discriminating mind. But that's only 1/2 of the truth. And we strive to act in such a way that we are one body. We are one body with each other. That the person that I disagree with, the person that I don't like because of X, Y, or Z, because of the way that they think, because of their skin color, because of their language, because of their culture. The person that I am at odds with is in essence, identical with myself. But it's the mind that discriminates that has us think or believe otherwise. And this is how wars really come about. So, how do we live out this realization of oneness, right? If that's the foundation, if the foundation of our practice is that we are one with all beings, how do we actually live that out? I feel like we're kind of like baby birds in a nest. We have the wings. We've seen other people fly. We've seen the parents fly. We're a little bit afraid to step out of the nest and to spread our wings. So Bendoho, its objective, I think, from my understanding, is to give us opportunities to practice flying within a community, within a safe space, to practice actualizing that sense of oneness in a smaller community, so that we could also actualize it in the larger community within which most of us live. Because I don't think there's anybody here today that actually lives full-time in a monastery, right? How do we actualize this in our daily life, in the life that you live in? We can practice it though in the Zen Center, and we can practice it in our own lives. And we can gain some inspiration from Bendoho. We can gain some inspiration from it. So one way of thinking of Bendoho is freedom of movement within a community. Again, whether that community is a monastic setting or the larger setting of our lives, which is what I think all of us here are living in. What specifically should we pay attention to? What specifically should we pay attention to? We can pay attention to a lot of different things, and often what we're paying attention to is our own needs and our own desires. And actually, what this Bendoho is saying, that we have to be careful about paying too close attention to our own desires, because those desires can potentially be a real problem for actualizing this sense of unity. Right? Or another way to think about Bendoho is, how do we bless each moment? How do we bless each moment of our life? Each thing that we come into contact with. And really the only way to do that is through reconciling with our own egos, with our own sense of separateness, our own sense of separation, our own sense of difference. I'm me and you're you, and I want to get what I want. Right? So I think the very first character, the very first Chinese character for Bendoho is the word Ben. And yesterday I was having fun fooling around with calligraphy and colors, and I made this. It'll appear backwards on your screen, but it doesn't matter, because this is the character, and in either case, whether you see it backwards or forwards, these two parts of the character, these two sides, are the exact same mini character within the larger character. And these two characters by themselves mean something like toilsome. So some kind of or distress could be another explanation for these two characters. Distress, toilsome, and in between it is the Chinese character for knife or sword. And it also has the symbolic meaning of strength or power. And so this power is, I like to think of it as power, because who among us doesn't wrestle at times with something that is toilsome? And we might feel like we're between a rock and a hard place, right? This being between a rock and a hard place. There's some power or strength that is potential there, that can emerge. That only, in a sense, our real power only emerges when we recognize the toilsomeness of our daily existence, the difficulty, the challenge. And that challenge is always wrapped up in our own egos, in our own ego and self-centeredness as well. All right? So how do we actualize that sense of oneness? So Ben, maybe one way to think of this Ben is the power that resides within a struggle. Right? And that struggle can be an individual struggle that you might be having. It could be a struggle with addiction. It could be a struggle with another human being. It could be a struggle with somebody personally in your life. It could be somebody who you don't know. Right? So, but there's power there. There's power in that. It could be a struggle with an event that's a part of your life. In any case, wherever it is, this is saying, this character is recognizing that wherever we are struggling, wherever we're having difficulty, there's great power, potential there for us. And this is at odds with maybe how many of us think. that if there's some struggle, we might collapse into defeat. We might give up. We might have a lot of doubts about our ability to respond to the moment, whatever it might be. And this character, Ben, is saying there's power here. There's great power here. So don't give up on yourself. And the foundational, in addition to this sense of unconditional love, compassion, grandmotherly mind, big mind, in addition to this foundation of Zen practice, there's the assumption in Zen that every situation is absolutely workable. Every hardship is workable. And we may not understand exactly how to deal with that hardship, but there's this strong sense of faith in that power being present. Maybe it's in its infancy form, but it's there, and it's up to us to access it. Now, there are two kinds of power in our practice. There's two kinds of power that we can access. The terms are ji-riki, so power, riki, power is riki. There's ji-riki, self-power, and then there's ta-riki, other power, right? So ji-riki, a lot of people associate zazen with ji-riki. It's like you're mustering your own strength, your own power to sit on that cushion. But if you look at zazen more closely, you can see that it's not just self-power that we access in doing zazen. There's also, if we open to the reality of doing the practice together with all beings, it's not just our own power that's present. That own power is there, but there's also other power. There's all beings supporting us in this particular moment to continue to evolve spiritually, to continue to mature into true human beings. Right? So that's, I want you to, kind of think about this power, especially when we feel like giving up, we're exhausted. That's natural and normal to feel that way at times. But when we recognize that we've got some power within us that we can access, and that we got power also coming from beyond our comprehension, that unlocks energy to do what we need to do. To let go of the ego that's constantly concerned about itself, and to think about how I can be of benefit to the whole. How I can be of benefit to the whole. And the Bendoho is asking us to direct our energy, direct our attention towards group harmony. We have a particular challenge here in the US because we don't necessarily see the value, by and large, of group harmony. We value individual recognition above even the group as a whole. And we actually live in an unprecedented time where we can actually choose not to get along with other people. We can actually choose not to get along. It's crazy because in the past, even maybe 100, 200 years ago, you almost were forced into getting along with other people because it was your survival. We survived because we worked together as a group. But now we live in this strange time where we've kind of almost, I would suggest that we've deluded ourselves into thinking that we can get along without the group, without group cohesion. So, but again, I want to come back to this idea that in ancient times, or even not too long ago, the community was what allowed us to survive. Now, of course, this does not mean that we should automatically put up with other people's dysfunctions and other people's egos. And that's where discernment is very, very important. We need to discern the right path and the right way of being in a harmonious relationship. And this is the challenge. This is the koan. This is the koan of our individual lives. It's also the koan of our country. How do we get along? How do we get along with others? And so the Buddha Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha, is saying that our lives are relational. The cosmos itself is relational, and we can look to the universe as a wonderful, profound example of relationality. Whether it's looking in a field and seeing all the, a prairie, seeing all the life forms interacting with each other, affecting the seeds, affecting the microorganisms in the soil, which affects the birds that are there, the predators, the small mammals that are there, the foxes, etc., all the eagles, all of these things are there in that micro environment of a field. But if we look at the macro level too, I was just looking at this past week of how think about the relationality of our Earth and how it spins at just the right spin, rotating on its own axis, and in relationship to a moon that goes around it. The size of the moon itself is just the right size. You know that Earth's moon is quite large in relation to other moons that revolve around other planets. The Earth's moon compared to the Earth is quite large. And that size itself affects the tides, and it affects our seasons, the changes in our seasons. So there's that relationship there, the Earth turning on its axis and the moon revolving around the Earth. That's all relational. Then there is the relationship between the Earth and the sun, right? So the Earth is going around the sun as well. There's a relationship there. And at some point in that cycle, the Earth tilts closer to the Earth or further away. It's not exactly a circle. It's more of like an elliptical. I'm not a scientist, so don't, if I say something that's not exactly right, please forgive me. But there's that But here's the point, is that we're just the right distance from the sun that if we were any closer, all the water on the planet would evaporate. And if we were any farther away, all the water would be frozen and inaccessible. We live in this, what they call the Goldilocks zone, as the Earth goes around the sun. I mean, just perfection, if you can imagine that. And then furthermore, here's the thing that really blows my mind, is that the sun itself has its axis, has its orbit around the Milky Way galaxy. So think about that. When you see the sun up there rising in the morning, we're told that the sun isn't moving, it's the Earth that's moving, and that's true. But the sun is also on its own orbit. It has its orbit too. And so here we are in this solar system moving through space, right? So this is something that we can, and this is big mind. This kind of contemplation is what we call big mind. We should think about it. We should think about all those relations that hold us together. We don't exist by ourselves. If any one of those orbits was different, we wouldn't exist. Right? If the Earth wasn't just the right distance from the sun, the moon wasn't in the right orbit around the Earth, there wouldn't be life as we know it. And then the sun itself has its own orbit. There must be some relationship there. It just boggles the mind to think of how all these relationships affect us and give us life. So I want to, we can look to Japanese Zen for our, to affirm our relations with all beings. But we can also look much closer to indigenous traditions here in the United States. And in particular, I want to call out the Lakota tradition. There's this wonderful saying of the Lakota, Mitakuye Oyasin. It's a kind of a greeting. and from what I understand, and it means all my relations. It's understanding that we are related to everything and everyone on some level. I want to let the Lakota elder here speak. So listen to this short video, just about 5 minutes long, but I just think it's so beautiful. It's by Elder Dave Swallow Jr., and he talks about Mitakuye Oyasin. Here we go.
My name is Dave Swallow Jr.
Can you guys hear that okay? Yeah, okay.
I was born on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation and lived there all my life. In the Lakota way, my name is Wowitan Yuhamani, which translates into walk with pride. I was given that name by my Lakota people. The message that I'm supposed to bring is the message we call Mitakuye Oyasne. Mitakuye Oyasne is a Lakota word meaning all my relations, all my relatives, which includes the tree, the earth, the sky, the air, the water, everything. And all the four-leggeds and things that crawl, and the two-leggeds and things that fly. The Creator made all of this, and each one of them has a purpose here on this earth. That is why we call it Mitakuye. When you die, you don't know what you're going to become of, but when you leave this world, your body returns to the earth to fertilize it again. So it could be part of the grass, part of a herb, part of a medicine, part of a tree, part of something, like that. Today I'm talking about my spiritual life. My spiritual life as a Mitakuye. For instance, this land here, I'm talking here on the Black Hills, the sacred land of my grandfathers and their grandfathers. And today when I come through here, all the buffaloes were gone, and my ancestors were gone. And there were many roads and fences and many cows. And my own land, I cannot go nowhere because I seen posted of no trespassing. And it hurts my heart to see it says this land is for sale. In my own land. My grandfather said this is a sacred place, a holy place, the heart of Mother Earth. Then I seen them cutting trees for nothing because they're going to build a road here in the Black Hills again. My great ancestors, my grandfathers and their grandfathers, Crazy Horse, they wanted to preserve this land for their grandchildren, which is us. They don't want no roads. They don't want no wire, no fence, nothing. When the first time Columbus came, this was land of free. Land of free. There was no tax. There was no ordinances, only the laws of the Creator. So today, I'm very happy to come here, and then I feel sad again. Because today we were placed on a small reservation known as Shannon County. And my people learned European ways, so they steal from one another and hate one another and cheated one another, stole one another's wife, money, car, and they fight about whose land and trespassing and all that. See? And that is not a Lakota way. In the Lakota way, first you have to think about, see the person's heart. You got to see the heart, and understand that man, that human. Because that person was made by the Creator. He was made by Creator. Creator made a red man and a black man, a yellow man and a white man. 4 mans he made. See? He didn't make a Catholic and Episcopal. He didn't make none of these. This world is made in the beginning a spiritual world, not a religious world. Spiritual and religious is two different things that persons has to understand. See? So when he made these men, they made them as brothers, all of them, the medicine wheel. See? So when we're going to talk about and say Mitakwe Oyas and all my relations, we have to mean it from here. We cannot go back with a fly spray and spray the cockroach. That's against the laws of the Creator. You must justify why you want to kill an insect, why you want to kill a snake, why you want to kill another human being, why do you want to take the tree down? What does it say to you? So this is when we're going to talk about Mitakwe Oyas, and it's all over the world. You know,
all right. Yeah, so that's what I wanted to share. Thank you so much for listening to that. So we can learn from the Zen tradition about this idea of all my relations, but we can learn it directly from the indigenous people in our own country, in particular the Lakota, with this term Mitakuye Oyasin. And here this Lakota leader was talking about, that's the, you know, in one sense, the reality is recognizing all my relations, but then what do we do with that? And he mentions, you don't want, you know, you have to know why you're doing what you're doing. That's the actualization that I've been talking to. So you don't just mindlessly cut down a tree. You don't just mindlessly kill a snake or even an insect, a cockroach, he says. That's very much in alignment with our Zen way of thinking too. We need to think through why we do what we do, so as to live in such a way that acknowledges the harmony there. You know, we just entered March 1st, and we left February behind today. And I've been reflecting on this wonderful month that we've set aside in our nation as Black History Month. Such an important month. We should also have, maybe one day we'll have a Native American month, a whole month set aside to understanding Native American cultures in our country. I think we should. But we do have this Black History Month, which is so important. And it's important to remember, you know, we're told to never forget. I remember when 9/11 happened, and it was it was a tragedy for so many people, and we were told never forget 9/11. I think it's even more true that we should never forget the history of our own country, in particular the slavery of Black people, as well as the genocide of many indigenous people and their cultures. It's just the fact of the history that we are born into. And if we come at this from a place of deep love, if we come at this from a place of recognizing all my relations, regardless of color of skin, including the animals, I think that's a vision. That's a common vision, regardless of our religious differences, our cultural differences, our linguistic differences. That's a common vision that we can get behind and make this world a much more livable place for all beings. Dogen, I want to conclude on a saying from Dogen in another fascicle with the term Bendoho in it. This is Bendoho. So there's Bendoho, and then there's Bendoho. Bendoho is kind of like the realization, and Bendoho is the actual, it's like the roadmap. Bendoho is the vision, Bendoho is the practice. And Bendoho gives us a beautiful vision. Dogen says, the trees, grasses, and land involved in this all emit a bright and shining light and preach the profound and incomprehensible Dharma. They preach. And it is endless. trees and grasses, walls, fences, expound and exalt the Dharma for the sake of ordinary people, sages, and all living beings. Ordinary people, sages, and all living beings in turn preach and exalt the Dharma for the sake of trees, grasses, walls, and fences. So the question remains, how do we do this? How do we practice this? And that's what I want to begin to start to look at over the next few Dharma talks and get into this teaching, Bendoho. Thank you very much.
Thank you.